Hello and welcome to Nessus Fundamentals, the 13th video as part of our Red Team Fundamentals mini-series. In the previous several videos, we have focused solely on Nmap. We discussed its network scanning capabilities amongst several other concepts that allowed us to thoroughly enumerate the services of a host. However, one of the things that you might have caught on was that we were missing Nmap's vulnerability scanning capabilities. Now, we decided not to cover it in those videos, and for a good reason. Nmap's vulnerability scanning is outdated and severely limited in today's vulnerability scanning standards. Therefore, in this video, we will discuss a tool named Nessus for comprehensive and advanced vulnerability scanning that you can implement in your engagements to gather more abundant intelligence on the target system vulnerabilities and weaknesses alike. Now, as per usual, everything we teach in this video is purely for educational purposes. We take no responsibility for your actions. My name is Evanas Montanes, and if you enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like as it helps us grow. Additionally, if you're interested, we have released a course on Red Team initial access techniques that covers modern foothold techniques and phishing in detail to help you land your first implant session on a target host. Furthermore, we have a rapidly growing Discord community for which you can join, contribute, or simply chat with us. Now then, in order to understand how to use Nessus as a tool, we have to understand precisely what a vulnerability is and how these are tracked. Now, at its most basic, a vulnerability is a weakness in a computer system, such as a software flaw, a misconfiguration, or human error that can be exploited to compromise a system. You have most likely heard of what a vulnerability is before, and in the world of cybersecurity, mostly everything is based around them. Actually, it is what gives us jobs and pays for our food, and without vulnerabilities, I'm sure there would not be the cybersecurity world as we know today. Anyway, each vulnerability, depending on its severity, is assigned a severity score, which ranges between 0 to 10. Now, of course, the higher the score, the more severe the vulnerability is. However, the framework that this severity is based upon is called the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or CVSS. Now, simply put, CVSS utilizes a formula with various metrics such as the scope and the privileges required that approximate ease and impact of an exploit. Now, we won't get too much into it as that is a whole video on its own. However, through this scoring system, we can identify the probability of how ripe a vulnerability is for picking. For instance, if a vulnerability is assigned a score of, say, 9 or even 10, then most likely it can be abused remotely, even so without any privileges to completely compromise a target host. Now, although this scoring provides us with an overview of the exploitability of a particular vulnerability, it is its unique identifier called the CVE that provides us a description of it. Now, mostly all vulnerabilities are assigned a CVE, and through them we can gain a better overview of them, report on them, and facilitate improved tracking and mitigation of them. These are the jewels that we present to the organization once the assessment is done, and really it is typically what the client pays for. Okay, so where does Nessus fit into all of this? Well, Nessus is the tool that allows us to conduct such vulnerability enumeration. By utilizing Nessus, we can identify particular CVEs, their severity, and through active reconnaissance, ones that we could pick for exploitation into the network. As you can probably see by now, in order for a tool of such to be effective, it needs to be constantly updated. With Nmap, unfortunately, this is not the case. However, with Nessus, vulnerabilities and their details are updated every single day, which is why it is the dominant tool for such intelligence gathering. That being said, let's now take a look at Nessus in more detail, install it, and actually get some scans going. Now then, to download or install Nessus, you can find it on Tenable's website, as Tenable actually owns the Nessus tool itself, and I'll leave a link to the actual URL where you can find the installation down in the description below. Now, once you're on this page, you will be prompted to select the version of Nessus that you want to install, and additionally you will be prompted to select the specific platform. Now, depending on the platform that you are running, this will differ, and you should be able to find your platform within this list, but typically for Kali Linux, Debian will suffice. So as you can see here, we get a list of which Debian versions this installation applies for, and also Kali Linux. So if we select this and click download, we'll be prompted to agree with the license agreement. Select I agree, and the download should begin. Now, it does provide us a checksum that we can check for. You have MD5. You also have SHA-256. So I'll just copy this MD5 value. I'll go into my downloads directory, and it has successfully downloaded. So to confirm that, indeed the download was not corrupted or, not changed in transmit, we can use the MD5 sum command along with the package that we installed. So if we click enter here, you'll see that we are provided a hash value, and the hash value is this long string of text. So if we take this and compare this to the one provided by Tenable, indeed it does match. 5A, yes, 5A, and then 695. Perfect. And now to install the package, we'll just use sudo with the dpackage command, and then we'll also need to specify the iSwitch and then the path to the Debian package for which we are installing. As you can see here, numerous different checks are made, and typically should your system be configured correctly, you should see a list of passes. However, if you do get a failure, I believe Nessus actually reports on the type of failure that it encountered, so you should be able to better understand why the installation failed. However, typically on Kali Linux, everything will be successfully set up for you. And once you successfully install Nessus, you will see the install passed message. Perfect. So everything is currently installed, and I believe it is installed in the opt directory. So if we take a look here, we'll find the Nessus directory. And to actually start Nessus now, we'll simply need to start it through systemd. And to do this, we simply use the systemctl command along with the status argument, and this will simply check whether the service is running or not. So if we provide Nessus d.service, and by selecting enter here, you'll see that currently the service is disabled. And also if we take a look down here below, we'll see that the service is inactive. Now, to enable the service, in order to start it upon system boot, you'll simply use the enable argument. Now, we don't really necessarily want to enable this because we don't want to be launching Nessus every time our system boots. So we'll simply use the start argument, which will simply start the service. Now, if we use the same status command, I'll actually use it with sudo, you'll see that Nessus is indeed running, and we can actually go and set it all up. Now, to access Nessus, we can simply do so through port 8834, and by selecting enter here, we will be prompted to agree with the certificate that it provides, and keep in mind that the certificate is self-signed. So if we select accept, risk, and continue, we will be prompted to Nessus's installation. Now, once you're on this screen, Nessus will prompt you to configure any sort of settings that it will use during installation. For instance, we can specify a proxy, can also specify a user agent for that proxy, and also we can specify an encryption password. Now, we don't need to actually agree upon any of these settings, and we can actually just press continue. Now, we will be prompted to select the version of Nessus that we want to install. Now, there are different versions of Nessus, and they provide different sort of capabilities, and typically these Nessus Expert and Nessus Professional will be used in organizational environments, and they will need a paid subscription, but we actually can set up a trial if we want to. In our case, we will simply select register for Nessus Essentials, as it has all of the capabilities that we need. So select and continue here. Then we will be prompted to provide a name, a last name, and then an email address for which our activation will be registered to. And once everything is provided, you can simply select register. Now, in the case that you did register before, you can simply skip this section and then you will have to provide the code manually. However, we'll just simply register now. Once registered, you should see your activation code. So copy this and store it somewhere securely and select continue here. And then you'll need to create a user account. So this will be an administrator account. So make sure you configure a strong password. And once that's done, we can simply select submit. No, Firefox, I don't want to save the password. And as you can see there, once your account is created, Nessus will begin downloading all of its plugins, and this step can take a little while. So just be patient. Now then, once everything has completed installing, you should see a message notification up here saying plugins are done compiling. And once so, we can simply close that. We will be presented with a welcome to Nessus Essentials message box. And essentially what this specifies is that in order to get started, you can launch a host discovery scan to identify what hosts on your network are available to scan. So essentially it will fingerprint those hosts, perform some enumeration on them, and present some useful output to us about that particular host. So let's actually provide a set of targets. So I will specify web1.corpa.cloud, and this is the web server that we were assessing during the time that we were performing Nmap scans. And you can actually provide IPv4 addresses or even a network range, but web1.corpa.cloud will be the target host. So once we select submit here, the DNS should perform, and hopefully we should be able to get an IP address. So there we go, 10.0.8.13. And to initiate the host discovery scan, we can simply select the run scan option. And actually just keep in mind that you need to select the specific host that you want to scan in case that you provided a IP address range. You'll be able to filter down on the IP addresses that you want to scan. So make sure that you select the specific asset before selecting the run scan button. Now, once the scan begins, you'll see a scan details section that outlines the basic properties of our scan. And as you can see here, there is a policy field, and essentially the policy field defines the sort of scan that is performing. Then you can also see the status field, and essentially it outlines whether the scan is still running, whether it's finished. However, the most interesting information you will find is typically within the host output. So as you can see here within the host tab, we are outlined with the specific host that we are scanning. And then also we are outlined with the identified vulnerabilities for that host. So as you can see here, we have 2 vulnerabilities of high severity. Then we have 2 vulnerabilities currently of medium severity, and then 70 informational. And also you can see here how much percentage of that scan has completed for that host. In this case, it is currently 6%. Now, this dashboard is really useful. However, the most interesting information you will find is within the vulnerabilities tab. And if you select this tab, you will see all of the vulnerabilities for which Nessus was able to identify. So here we have a vulnerability that is relevant to SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. And if we click on this specific vulnerability, we will be presented with the specific vulnerabilities that are found. So here are those 2 high vulnerabilities that were found. You can also see 7.5 is its score. If we actually click on this vulnerability, you will be provided a nice set of information, providing you with a description of that vulnerability, with a solution for that vulnerability, and also the output for that vulnerability. And then also here you get additional plugin details, essentially the plugin that was used in order to identify the vulnerability. And then also another useful section here is exploit available. Essentially it outlines whether a particular exploit has been made available to the public. So we can potentially download that exploit and then run it against our host. Additionally, here you have exploitees, essentially outlining whether a exploit is even required to exploit the vulnerability. In this case, no exploit is required. And then also you get the vulnerability publishment date, which is 1998. November the 17th. So some really useful information in terms of what you can gather by actually inspecting the found vulnerabilities. Now, interestingly enough, a critical vulnerability was found on the host. So if we actually go to vulnerabilities and keep in mind that the severity here is rated from top to bottom, and essentially the highest severity of vulnerabilities are shown at the top, and then the lowest severity vulnerabilities, such as these informational ones, will be showed at the bottom. Now, if we select this first result here, we'll be able to identify the specific vulnerability, CVSS score of 10, and if we click on this, we'll be able to get some more information again about the vulnerability. Now, in this case, it appears that, the vulnerability in this case is related to an outdated version of Windows, which could potentially allow us to exploit the factor of an unupdated system. So hopefully now you should start to see how much valuable such information can be. And by exploring and identifying such vulnerabilities, we can then better plan our operations ahead. Now we can actually view Nessus's dashboard. If we go into the My Scans folder, you'll be able to view all of the scans that previously took place. And here you can delete scans, you can start scans again, you can also stop scans or pause scans, and then also you can launch new scans, which we'll take a look at shortly. Now, once the scan completes, typically we will want to save it to avoid re-scanning the host. And additionally, we might want to generate a report for the client's viewing. Now, to do so, we can simply select report up here. We'll also be able to select the type of format we want to generate the report in. So we've got HTML, we've got PDF, we've got CSV. And then additionally, you will need to select the specific report template. And the report template outlines the specific details that will be included in the report. Now, we will select a complete list of vulnerabilities by host, and this will include every single found vulnerability. And this is typically the one that you might want to present to the client. So having selected that, we'll simply select generate report. So there we go. Once the report is done, we'll get a nice little report in PDF format. Here we can see the vulnerabilities by host. Scrolling down here a little further, we will be able to find the specific vulnerabilities that we found for that host. And as you can see here, we get a nice table here that outlines the severity of the found vulnerability. And you've also got its CVSS score, the specific plugin that was used, and then also the name of the vulnerability. And this is really useful for clients because they can take a look at one of these vulnerabilities. Let's take this first one here. They can essentially identify the host that is affected by it, and by selecting this plugin here, will be redirected to the plugin's information. Now, this information will essentially provide a little description about what the vulnerability is, and then also, and most importantly, the client will be able to view a solution of that particular vulnerability as well. And additionally, if you are writing a report after your assessment, typically this is good this is some good information to take for your report. Now, of course, we could make it a little bit more thorough, but the solution for the unsupported Windows operating system is to essentially upgrade to a supported service pack or operating system. So maybe it's time to move on from Server 2012 maybe to 2022 or even 2025. Now, one of the issues or drawbacks to the scan that we implemented, my basic network scan in this instance, is that it was not really that comprehensive. And although we managed to find critical and even high vulnerabilities, not all of the ports or not all of the plugins were evaluated against a host. And this makes sense because my basic network scan is only meant to run a basic network scan or basic vulnerability scan. And to actually create a more comprehensive scan, we can simply create one of our own. Now, to do this, we will simply select the new scan button up there. And as you'll see, you will be presented with an abundant amount of scans that Nessus supports. And as you can see here, some of these scan types are, restricted from us purely because we are running Nessus Essentials, so we will need a upgraded Nessus version in order to run them. But what we want is to simply select the basic network scan, and as you'll see here, we will be prompted to provide a custom set of options to configure our new scan. Now keep in mind, we are still running a basic network scan. As an exercise, I will leave it to you to configure an advanced scan, but still the same principles apply for the basic network scan. And the reason we are choosing the basic network scan is purely because it's easier to explain. Now, once you select the basic network scan, you will be prompted to provide a name and a set of targets. We'll simply provide the name of web1, and for our targets, web1.corp8.cloud. Now you can actually upload a set of new line separated targets. I believe you can upload a set of comma separated targets as well. You'll simply select add file here, and then you'll be able to upload your set of targets. Additionally here, if you want to, you can add a description, and you can select a custom folder for which you want to save the scans in. Now everything here is perfectly fine, but you can also schedule your scan to a specific time, and we'll select disabled for now because we want to run the scan immediately. And then also you can select the email recipients for which your scan results will be delivered to. And this is really useful because, you know, if you are running long scans or scans across multiple hosts, it can take a significant amount of time. And, in the cases that, you want to be notified upon when your scan has completed, you can simply provide a set of email recipients having configured an SMTP server first. Now, if we click on this to configure the SMTP server, you'll need to provide a host, a port, from the account the email will be sent from, and then several different options here. And you can actually test the whether the emails are supported. Now there are several SMTP servers that are free. One of them is called SparkPost, and we've used this in one of our courses. But essentially, I would recommend that you set up an account with SparkPost, and as an exercise, configure an SMTP server that sends you a notification once the scan has completed. And let me know in the comments down below if you've managed to achieve this. It's pretty simple, and really anybody should be able to do this with a little bit of Googling. Anyway, back to our scan. Once we have provided all of the options here, we can proceed to the discovery settings. Now, one of the drawbacks to the earlier scan that we performed is that the scan only performed enumeration on the common ports. Now, if you remember on the video of mmap, typically just assessing the set of common ports is not really that comprehensive, because many different organizations may configure ports on non-standard ports. For instance, maybe Jenkins running on port 7331, as we saw in our last video. So really, where available, you should implement a all port scan. And as you can see here, selecting the drop down menu, we'll be able to select this option. Now we will actually select custom, and we won't select all ports for now, purely because we want to enable UDP scanning as well. And if you remember, UDP services are also good for enumeration. So if we select custom here, you'll see that we are presented with several different settings that we can configure. Now, one of the options that we do want to turn on is within the port scanning settings here. And if we scroll down here a little, you'll see the UDP section. And essentially all that this specifies is that this option engages the built-in Nessus UDP scanner to identify UDP ports on the targets. So by selecting this, we will be able to perform UDP scans as well as TCP scans. And we're not actually performing the complete three-way TCP handshake. Instead, we're using the SYN option, and this will perform only half of the handshake, which is a little bit more stealthier. Now, moving on, we have the assessment option, and the assessment option defines the type of assessment that will be performed against the target hosts. So as you can see here, you've got your scan outline or the specific settings for the scan. But by selecting this drop-down menu, we will also be able to select a different scan type other than default. Now, in our case, we will select the scan for all web vulnerabilities, which is a complex scan, but you can also configure a custom one. And essentially, You can configure whether brute forcing is enabled, whether you want to scan for web applications, whether you want to enable querying information about the SMB domain, and a lot more options. But in our case, we'll select assessment here, and we'll select scan for all vulnerabilities, and then you'll see here the outline of the set of options that will be enabled. Now, because we are running a web server on the target host, in our case, this is quite useful. Now, moving on to the second to last option here, we have report. And essentially all of these options define how the reporting for the scan will be conducted. And typically everything here is fine, so we can leave everything as is. And then moving to the final set of options, we have advanced. Now, advanced is really important because this section offers advanced configuration options, including the ability to halt scanning when hosts become unresponsive. And this is really useful during real-world assessments to prevent further complications. So if we select this drop-down menu, select custom here, I'm going to general, and then the second option of stop scanning hosts that become unresponsive during the scan is worthwhile selecting. So we'll just select this option here. Now you can also select other options. For instance, you can scan the IP addresses that are provided through the set of included hosts, and you can do so by randomizing their order. In our case, we've only got one, so it's pretty useless. And then you've got a set of other options that you can configure here as well. Scrolling down here a little bit, we have a set of performance options that we can configure, and these performance options will essentially dictate how quick and how efficient your scan is. And then scrolling down here a little further, you've got some Unix specific set of settings. You've got Windows specific set of settings, and you've got some debugging settings as well. And then you've got some additional options for how the vulnerability scanning will be performed. And with that, we should have a complete set of options to run the scan with. Now, before we actually initiate the scan, we can actually configure a set of credentials for it. And these credentials are not for the scan specifically, but these credentials are for the hosts of whom we are performing the scans of. Now, in case of Linux, or actually Windows as well, you can specify a set of SSH credentials, but you can also select Windows here. You can provide the specific username of that particular host's user, then the password, and then optionally the domain of that user as well. Now, you can actually configure the authentication method. You can actually use a NTLM hash, and if exposed, you can also use Kerberos as authentication. And this is more useful when you're already within the environment. And lastly, here we have the plugins tab, which essentially outlines all of Nessus's plugins. Now, in this case, as you can see here, we have a little I symbol here, and what this defines is that currently all of the plugins are read-only. Now, the reason so is that because we are configuring a basic network scan, and to essentially customize the plugins that are incorporated within our scans, we have to use an advanced scan. So again, I'll leave it as an exercise for you to scan your local network using an advanced scan. And then depending on your network, hosts or hardware, then you can configure the specific plugins that you might want to incorporate. But in our case, we'll leave everything as is. We'll go back into settings here, and to launch the scan, we'll select this drop down arrow here and select launch. Now, we can also save the scan in future references if we want to, but in our case, we'll just select launch. Now, once launched, we will be redirected back to the My Scans folder. And then here we can see the specific scan that we just configured. So if we select this, we'll be presented with the same dashboard that we explored earlier. Now, as this scan unfolds, if we select the found vulnerabilities, this first row here will reveal a new service that has been identified by Nessus. And this service in particular is Jenkins. Click on this. We will see that Jenkins, or the specific version of Jenkins that our target web server is running, is suffering from a critical vulnerability. Now, if we take a look at its description here, we will be able to see that a specific version of Jenkins that was identified suffers from a vulnerability where the command line parser replaces an @ symbol or an @ character followed by a file path in the argument with the file's contents. And essentially, this vulnerability allows unauthenticated attackers to read arbitrary files on the Jenkins controller file system. And here we can see the specific CVE that was identified in this case. Now, if we take a look down here below, we will be able to see the specific version that was identified. And then also here we can see the specific port that was identified. And earlier, when we were issuing Nmap scans, this specific information was not made available. And this is because, Nmap did not feature the capabilities to perform what Nessus just did. And by using this specific vulnerability, if we actually navigate to the specific Jenkins instance here, we will be able to potentially abuse Jenkins as our initial way in. And that covers it for Nessus fundamentals. Hopefully you've learned something from this video that you can take and apply. Please forgive me today that I am a little bit ill and under the weather at the minute. So I've got a little bit of a sore throat, but hopefully that has not made an impact on this video. Anyway, the schedule for the next couple of weeks will be made void. And instead we should be back late November. I'm going on holiday back to the motherland, so I won't be here to record content. However, all that we will cover in the following videos has already been made available to you in the initial access course, which we released last week. And you can find the link to it in the description below. Until then, stay safe and I will see you in the next one.